Thank you.
I call to order the October 29, 2019 special meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have roll call?
Council members Agajanian. Devine.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Sharpetian.
Here.
And Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the October 29, 2019 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on Thursday, October 24th, 2019 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Mr. Mayor and Council, there is one item that was listed on this agenda, which was a closed session item, which will be taken off this agenda and will not be considered. The first two items before you are Director of Community Development regarding discussion and direction regarding Alex Theater management funding and future. 2A is a motion directing staff and followed by a report by the City Clerk.
Thank you. Ms. Beers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this item before you today was initially culminated in February of 2019 when staff presented the financials on the Alex Theater. And at that time, there was discussion at this dais related to the future of the Alex Theater, the management of the Alex Theater, the contract by which we are under, and requested to have a formal discussion to be brought forward to the City Council. Today we are here before you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, to provide you with the staff's analysis of other community types of theater groups that are out there, the work that they do in their communities, and the structure by which they are under, and provide you with information related to the Alex Theater here in the city of Glendale, and provide you with some options related to the management agreement that we have in place today in terms of the possibility of extending for a 5-year management agreement with Glendale Arts, something higher than that, something lower than that, going out for an RFP depending on council's pleasure. And the reason why we are here today is because this contract does extend until June of next year, 2020. So we are here before you about 8 months prior to that contract ending, and wanted to have this discussion so that depending on council's policy direction, we have the opportunity to implement that policy direction accordingly. With that, I'd like to kick this off to Tamar Saad, who will give you the overview of her findings related to the Alex Theater and the management. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beers. Thank you for the overview. I am here because of the February 2019 meeting and to provide additional information. The Glendale Redevelopment Agency had purchased Alex Theater in 1992 and invested over $10 million to transform it into a performing arts center and anchor for the city's downtown. It was purchased with the intent of providing historic preservation for the resource, delivering a cultural facility to Glendale residents, and serving as an economic engine for the downtown. Over the past 27 years, the Alex has evolved from a community theater to a regional player in the arts and a rental house for some of television's biggest networks. With the purchase of the theater, the Art Board was created to supervise the renovation and operation of the Alex Theater. The theater reopened on New Year's Day 1993, and the agency initiated a 5-year operating agreement with the Theater Corporation of America, who promised to produce a full season of musical theater and other productions. The organization went bankrupt within the year, and in 1994, Martin Kagan was brought on as the Art Board's first executive director. The Art Board was a nonprofit organization and a quasi-city commission, with half the board members being appointed by the City Council. The council-appointed board members, however, were not required to assist with fundraising for the theater. This lack of fundraising, coupled with the fact that the theater struggled to compete with other venues due to its size and the difficulty in receiving grants due to the association with the city, led to ongoing financial instability for the theater. From 1996 to 2001, the agency provided an average of $560,000 a year in operating subsidies, in addition to financial responsibility for all capital improvements and maintenance. In 2001, Barry McComb became the executive director and reduced operating subsidy to $415,000. To address some of the fundraising issues, the agency approved the restructuring of the Art Board as a private nonprofit entity with an expanded role to be named Glendale Arts in 2008. This customized organization was set up to manage the theater in a manner that met the city's and community's needs. The new structure continued to provide the agency with the appropriate oversight of the operations at the Alex Theater. The 5-year strategic plan for the newly formed Glendale Arts included achieving long-term financial stability for the Alex. The strategic plan was predicated on the agency completing a series of capital improvement projects, which would expand the Alex's operational space and bring it up to market standards. In 2008, the agency entered into a lease and management agreement with Glendale Arts to manage and operate the theater through 2015. In 2012, Elisa Glickman was named CEO of Glendale Arts. The redevelopment agency was dissolved, and the Alex Theater closed for renovations. In 2013, the theater reopened with some of the work ongoing and focused on becoming a full-time rental facility. Instead of producing programming, Glendale Arts invests in rental subsidies for resident companies, nonprofits, and rental users in line with the city's vision. In 2018-19, these programming subsidies totaled almost $200,000. Glendale Arts' focus has changed over the years from a tenant producing content for the theater to a manager of the venue for the city. They have evolved from the directive originally outlined by then City Council and alongside the vision of more recent City Councils to suit the needs of Glendale's changing populations, tastes, and cultural needs. The organization also provides Glendale residents with the arts through their GAEDU technical internships for high school and college students, the Taste Walk Glendale and Open Arts Music Festival connecting music, food, and drinks into a family-friendly event, and the summertime pop-up concerts throughout the downtown. Even though the theater has evolved, even through the theater's evolution into a more regional draw, it continues to serve as a cultural hub for the Glendale community first. Of the 47 repeating clients of the theater, 19 organizations are Glendale-based. As noted in the chart, community events and concerts are the biggest uses, with film shoots and dance following closely after. The Glendale Arts Board is charged primarily with managing the Alex Theater and coordinating resources. There are currently 18 board members, with a majority made up of Glendale residents and/or business owners. The theater's ongoing operations act as a catalyst for attracting new retail, restaurants, and visitors to the area, compounding the benefit of the arts beyond just the cultural value. During the fiscal year 18-19, Glendale Arts hosted more than 70,000 patrons at the Alex Theater and 15,000 people at their free community arts events. Businesses surrounding the theater experience increased sales when the theater is in operation, and patrons help generate an estimated $1.4 million in economic activity. When looking at where Glendale Arts income originates, a majority of the revenue comes from earned income. It's 79% earned versus 21% contributed. And when looking at a breakdown of their earned income, a majority of it comes from reimbursable labor, followed by rental income and ticketing service fees, and the remainder is comprised of concession sales, production income, and merchandise. The 21% of Glendale Arts revenue, which is contributed income, is comprised of the management fee, followed by corporate giving, individual giving, and the remainder is special events and grants. The ability to secure grant funding is a direct benefit of working with a nonprofit partner who support the building's infrastructure and performing arts. In coming years, Glendale Arts will be focused more on individual and corporate giving through naming opportunities. At the February council meeting, council did request additional information on how the Urban Art Fund could be used to support the Alex Theater. The fund's guidelines indicate it could be utilized to support performances and to be used to improve the theater itself by addressing many of the items from the capital improvement project list. It could not, however, be used to support the management fee directly. The fiscal year 1920 fund balance is nearly $8 million. As I had mentioned, Glendale Arts would like to focus on a naming campaign in the coming years. Prior to initiating that, they needed to understand the true cost of the potential spaces, and over the last 2 years, developed a comprehensive capital improvement plan. To better prepare for large costs, Council had also requested a similar outline of anticipated projects. Capital improvements over the next 20 years are estimated at $5.2 million in 2019 dollars. Under the current management agreement, some of these items are the City of Glendale's responsibility, while a majority of them are Glendale Arts' responsibility, about $1 million versus $4.2 million.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Aguirre.
City of Glendale's responsibility is $1,029,000. When, for what? How long? What period of time?
Over the next 20 years, if we remained with the current management agreement terms, the City of Glendale is responsible for the foundation, the exterior walls, structural condition of interior bearing walls, exterior roof, and the fire detection and suppression system. And the capital improvement project list was generated looking at the general life cycle of these various items. So a majority, everything other than those structural elements are Glendale Arts' responsibility. So a majority of the costs would be their responsibility according to our current management agreement.
So, city's responsibility is $1 million in 20 years, you're saying?
Over the next 20 years,
How is that?
Well,
How
if
came
I
up
may-
with this figure?
One of the things that the council had asked for is that capital improvement program. What does it look like going out? In fact, Glendale Arts had already started looking at that. If you remember, they need to know the cost of spaces so then they can go on their naming campaign. So the staff has gone through an exercise to look at the capital needs of this building for 20 years, and they've assigned cost to each of those. They got to be done sometime in a schedule over 20 years. The things that Glendale, the City of Glendale is responsible per our management agreement and our ground lease is $1 million. When that comes is, I'm not sure we have the schedule right in front of us, but it's sometime in the next 20 years.
So you're talking about construction costs.
It would be any of those things that Tamar talked about, foundation, roof,
Right.
systems, those types of general maintenance issues, and that's just on a cycle for any building, on when it needs to be replaced, when it needs to be upgraded, maintained, and things like that.
What was the cost past 20 years, where building was not as old as now? So this is 20 years later, building will be older. So what was past 20 years, what was the cost?
Do you have, I want to say it was, well, in 1993, we spent $10 or $11 million to bring it up to a standard. So from 93 to 03 would be 10, and 2013 would be the past 20. So in that time, I want to say, I know that we spent $6.5 million on an upgrade of the theater where we expanded it. In the meantime, prior to Mr. McComb, I want to say it was $5 million that was spent in capital.
it was 4.6 in 2013. I'm not sure during the
Okay.
Macomb time.
So we've spent in the last 20 years somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 million on the building, capital projects in the building, including the expansion.
I have a question. It would,
Does that answer your?
Not yet, but
Okay. Mr. Vine?
yeah, you mentioned that these maintenance or these construction costs were to bring it up to market.
Yeah, right. So in
Value rate.
2013, we expanded, the theater was expanded so that there was proper dressing rooms and backstage area in an effort to attract more companies. A lot of the companies said, you know, this isn't enough space. So in an effort to attract more users to the theater, a large expansion was completed in 2015.
So that was why we spent as much money to bring it up so that it could be more usable, more attractive to outside companies. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. While it is difficult to anticipate exactly when things will become outdated or require replacement, capital improvements have been broken down into a timeline based on their typical life cycles. In the next 3 years, CIPs are estimated at just above 800,000. In the next 4 to 10 years, $1.2 million. In the next 11 to 20 years, $1.7 million. And about $1.45 million in other major projects, but they're not anticipated for a specific time frame. We know when the carpet is expected to, the life cycle for the carpet is expected to be replaced, but maybe not other items as specific as the carpet or the elevators. There's been a long expectation that the Alex Theater would become self-sufficient, as referenced earlier as part, and to address Councilmember Devine's comment. In 2008 lease and management agreement, the council committed to funding a comprehensive list of capital projects totaling $4.6 million to expand the theater and bring it to market standards. Both the agency and Glendale Arts believe that once these improvements had been completed, the theater would attract and accommodate a wider variety of productions and achieve self-sufficiency by the end of the initial agreement in 2015. These improvements were anticipated to be completed in 2012, and self-sufficiency would be coming a few years later once clients had the opportunity to see the space. However, with dissolution, all progress was delayed 3 years. The 2008 management agreement was set up with a declining management fee, decreasing as bookings would be increasing. The Alex Theater has indeed attracted an impressive clientele base. Since fully reopening in 2015, the theater has been in use on average more than 4 days a week. Due to the larger scale of the production, since attracting companies like Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, NBC, and CBS, this is the upper average of the amount of activity the theater can handle with the larger load in and load outs. Glendale Arts also continues to have increasingly better financial years, growing from a $1.5 million organization in 2015 to a $2.48 million organization in 2020. But even amongst this growth, it has become evident that in its best years, it cannot be completely self-sufficient. The increasing cost of labor, insurances, maintaining an aging building, and paired with the necessary subsidies, expenses continue to outpace revenues. The Alex Theater primarily serves as a performing arts venue with 1,400 seats. To accurately compare theaters, only similarly sized historic theaters that are owned by municipalities were studied to ensure the challenges and advantages were properly matched. In California, there are 7 other historic theaters similarly sized to the Alex Theater with about 1,000 to 2,000 seats that are owned by municipalities. 4 are operated by nonprofits, 2 are operated by city staff, and 1 is operated by a for-profit entity. The other 4 theaters operated by nonprofits do not receive management fees from the city, but in all of these instances, the city does cover the cost of all capital improvements. Merced Theater and California Theater operate as small movie houses and rental spaces, generating under $1 million in revenue, and here the cities also cover utilities and maintenance. The Balboa Theater is more comparable to the revenue generated by the Alex Theater. They are managed by San Diego Theaters, who also operates a second, much larger theater in San Diego. The last nonprofit, Team San Jose, also does not receive a management fee, but does have full access to the Convention and Cultural Affairs Capital and Convention Center Capital Fund and Convention Center Facilities District Capital Fund. Both funds are driven by transient occupancy taxes. The nonprofit manages a much larger portfolio for the city, including 4 theaters and the Convention Center and Visitors Bureau. The past year, the funds contained $17 million. Team San Jose used $2.5 million to address a variety of electrical, mechanical, structural, and unanticipated and miscellaneous rehabilitation and repair projects at the cultural facilities, and this averaged about $500,000 per venue. The 2 venues that are operated by city staff are operating at losses. San Gabriel's budget reflects a $1 million loss, and there is an unreported amount in the case of the Warner Grand. The City of Los Angeles does not track expenses based on venue, but in speaking with staff, the Warner Grand generates about $200,000 in revenue annually, and the city has committed to $6.5 million in capital improvements over the next 2 years in an effort to make the space more attractive to rentals. The one that is managed by a for-profit entity, Live Nation, receives a $500,000 management fee from the city. Per the agreement, the city sustains any losses and reaps any benefits beyond Live Nation's operating costs. The past year was the first time since the 2013 agreement that the city received money back from Live Nation. They received $300,000, though in previous years this has amounted to additional losses to the city, and the highest year was $450,000. The city also covers all capital improvements, maintenance, and utilities for the theater. The nonprofits that manage the theaters that I discussed previously are all local to their communities. Aside from Live Nation, other for-profit companies in California that manage theaters include Golden Voice, AEG, Nederlander, and Sterling Venue Ventures. The overall discussion on council's vision for the management of the Alex Theater is important because our current agreement, as Ms. Beers mentioned, with Glendale Arts does expire June 2020 with an option to extend. These are the significant business points of the 2015-2020 lease agreement. It is a 5-year lease term with one 5-year option to extend, a nominal annual rent, landlord responsibilities, which we discussed, are foundation, exterior walls, structural condition of interior walls, exterior roof and fire detection systems, while tenant responsibilities include all other maintenance and capital improvements. Glendale Arts does retain the right to sell naming opportunities for portions of the Alex for fundraising purposes with final approval by the city. Major points of the management agreement include declining management fee from $415,000 in 2015 to $150,000 in this final year, and days of activity goals increasing from 225 in 2015 to 245 in 2020. Glendale Arts is also required to maintain reserves with a minimum of $75,000, provide quarterly financial reports and annual audits to the city, provide 4 rent-free days, event days to the city, and 6 rent-free reception days to the city, and responsibility for all operating costs associated with managing the theater. As this current agreement comes to a close, staff is requesting direction from the City Council on whether to negotiate the 5-year extension to the current contract with Glendale Arts, negotiate a new contract with Glendale Arts, or pursue a request for proposal. With either a new contract or a request for proposal, staff is requesting direction on major points, including lease agreement period for the Alex Theater. A longer term would help Glendale Arts in soliciting naming opportunities, days of activity, programming goals, subsidies for nonprofits and resident companies, city use of the facility, level of control and oversight, responsibility for capital improvements, maintenance and utilities, and a management fee structure. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions from the City Council. Also present is the CEO of Glendale Arts, Elisa Glickman, and members of the Glendale Arts Board.
Okay, thank you. Is there a staff recommendation on this item?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we do not have a recommendation on this item because we want to ultimately receive input and feedback from the City Council related to your policy direction in terms of moving forward.
Okay. So we have the option of doing a 5-year.
Correct?
Anything longer, anything shorter, or
Correct.
going to an RFP.
Correct.
What are the downsides to an RFP? Is it disruptive? Is it useless? I mean, what would an RFP get us if we were to go that route?
I think about the only thing you'd have is a pause in whatever campaigning Glendale Arts could do. If they were to go to a contributor, the contributor would say, well, do you have a lease? And, well, we're going through an RFP. Other than that, I don't know that there's any downside to it.
Right.
What type of, are there independent operators out there that are waiting for us to put out an RFP and apply for it? Because I'm not, obviously, not in the industry. I have no idea if it's a popular field and there's groups out there, or whether there's hardly any and far and few between.
To answer your question, short answer is yes, there are groups that would come and operate the theater. They are, for the most part, for-profit, like Live Nation, Nederlander. They may come with a specific niche, rock and roll bands, per se. What is, and part of the reason to talk about the evolution, I think, is that the Glendale Arts, or the manager of the theater, because it's been several over the years, has evolved over time to meet the particular needs of Glendale. I don't know that there's anybody out there, I don't know, I would look for an RFP, but I would be interested to know if there's somebody that will do all of the local things as well as the national productions that the management team has grown into.
So you're saying there's relationships that have developed between
Well,
the...
they understand the community, and I think over the years, what the council has wanted out of the theater, that is a regional performing arts theater, but one that will also cater to the local community.
Are there any cards on this before
There's 4 cards.
Would you like to hear from the speakers, or do you want to ask questions, or?
I have a quick question. In terms of naming rights, what are we talking about? I mean, is it a multi-million-dollar deal that's going to make a significant contribution to the budget, or do we have any idea?
As I understand, it could be if we allowed, let's say, the Spire to be named, the Quintero Spire, down to dressing rooms that may be tens of thousands of dollars. Somebody has their name on a dressing room that's down there. So the opportunities, I think, are vast in how far the Glendale Arts Board can get somebody to contribute. And I think in prior years, we've talked about naming rights, and the council, at least at the time, was comfortable in allowing certain things. But I remember maybe even Mr. Najarian said, well, I don't want it to be called the Qualcomm Theater.
I didn't like that idea.
You didn't like the idea.
Depends how much they're willing to pay.
That's my feeling exactly. I mean, for a nominal sum, it's not worth it.
I mean, they build
Something-
football stadiums
Right.
based on naming rights. But anyway, that's another issue.
Just a follow-up question.
Yes, Mr. Carpenter.
So the idea of naming rights and selling the seats, basically to have names on the seats of the theater, has been floating around for the last 3-4 years?
Well, certainly it was included in this agreement that was entered into in 2015. The agreements give Glendale Arts the right to naming campaigns, subject to the council's approval, I believe.
The naming opportunities are subject to council's approval. They are also only for the term of that Glendale Arts has. So that is part of their request to do, if we extended their agreement, instead of doing 5 years, where they could only sell the naming right for 5 years, if we did something longer, say 10 years, that would be easier for them to solicit larger naming opportunities. And that was part of the reason they did the capital campaign, or the capital improvement plan, was to figure out how much does all of this really cost. If we sell the lobby area, the naming rights to the lobby area, is it $1 million or is it $10 million to maintain that space? And so that is part of the overall campaign.
So the naming rights will be tied to the length of the contract?
That's the way it's currently set up. Unless
Never
council
seen
wanted
such a
to
thing.
approve something longer. It would be at council's direction.
No, I understand, but I've never seen such a thing. If you go to any church, you have these little tags on the back of the seats that those names stay there forever. When you pay a naming right for a seat, for example, these are not For five, is that what I'm hearing? That
Well, I
it's
mean,
for
they-
five?
May I address this question? Because I can actually answer.
Well, I have you as a speaker, so when we're done, save that as something to. You'll be the first.
Naming changes over the years. One I'm familiar with that I used, Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, their contract expired, and now it's San Diego County Federal Credit Union Stadium. The lease or the naming rights on the seats currently run for 10 years. And then you could renew those and repurchase the seat, or somebody else could repurchase that seat. So you can have a period of time. The way that the agreement was set up is if I've got a lease for 5 years, I can't sell naming rights for 10 unless I'm given that right, and whoever succeeds me has to succeed me with that remaining 5 years.
That's what, okay. I think that's what you should, I mean, when you sell the naming rights for 10 years, you can sell it for more money, basically, more expensive. And regardless of who's running the theater, that name can stay there for 10 years or 20 years or 15. Am I correct? I just want to understand it. I'm not saying to go which one way or the other. I just want to understand it.
Yes, I mean, we could structure it that way, and we'll have to parse out, well, whose revenue, who does that revenue belong to on the naming rights? My guess is for the 5 years, and then if we changed after 5 years, it'd be somebody else's revenue. It may already be spent, in which case the next successor doesn't have the ability to name that thing until the expiration.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, first speaker is Elisa Glickman.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, City staff, I'm Elisa Glickman. I'm the CEO of Glendale Arts. I have some long remarks, if you wouldn't mind indulging some additional time, and I'd also like to address Councilmember Garpetian's question first, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll tell you what. You can address his question free of time,
Thank
within
you.
reason. And then when you're done with that question, then we'll start the clock.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So in answer to your question, the way our contract, so we're in the formative phases of our naming campaign. We needed, as Ms. Sad said, to establish the bottom line criteria of what it is we need for the venue, what the total costs of those things are, how we're going to parse out those projects. So for example, if we want to do a forecourt redesign and we want to call it the Garpetian forecourt, but the redesign of everything, the redesign of everything costs us $500,000, but we sell the naming opportunity for a 10-year deal for $1 million, because we're going to take the remainder of that $500,000 and put it in a reserve account or endowment so that we can continue to feed ongoing renovations to the space that's named after you. Now, in answer to the length of the agreement, it could be a 5-year, it could be a 10-year, it could be a 20-year, depending on the amount of financial commitment that is written into the contract and how much of that money is spent on a particular project. So it really comes down to individualizing each naming opportunity based on what it is we're trying to pay for. That being said, to Mr. Lanzafame's point, we could have two separate operators on an extended contract. If Glendale Arts' contract expires and the council in their wisdom decides to find another operator down the line, we would then have to look at the contractual obligations that we have to the particular donor and the length of time and how we've expended those funds based on that contract. There may be money still left in the reserve account. There may be those funds that have already been expended because all of the promissory things that we did in order to get that naming opportunity have been fulfilled. So it's really based on the particular contract that we develop based on the particular naming opportunity. So I hope that that further clarifies.
Just one more quick question,
Sure.
because you mentioned very
Naming something
interesting-
after you? I thought you'd catch on.
Yeah, very, very interesting point, that if the naming opportunities, if the cost of, let's say, renovating the courtyard is $500,000 and you sell the naming opportunity for $1 million for 10 years, the remaining of that fund, the balance of that 500,000, where does that go? Does that go to the general fund for this account for Alex Theater and can be spent on other things, or it could be in a separate account, so in 5 years, if that courtyard needs more renovation, you spend that, you take that from $500,000 and spend it on the courtyard.
Sure.
I just want to understand how does
we
that
have
work.
a variety of designated accounts, and we have an investment account with the Jewel City Investment Group, formerly the Stonebeck Group. So they currently hold our mandated $75,000 to $125,000 of investment money that's written into our lease and management agreement. As we start to increase our ability to sell these naming opportunities, we can create separate sub-accounts within those investments, or we can create restricted accounts that we already use today. So again, it really comes down to the individualized contracts, but those dollars can be restricted for specific purposes, and we certainly have places to house those monies and use them and expend them as the contracts allow.
Okay.
And invest them as well. So the infrastructure is there. We just need the first donor. I'm looking at you.
Keep looking.
Just kidding. Well, you brought it up, so I thought you were interested. Okay. Are there any other questions on that particular subject before Mayor Najarian starts the time? Great, thank you. So you already know who I am, and I just wanted to let you know I've been working in this community for 15 and a half years. I've been a resident for 6, and at 7 and a half years, I'm the longest serving executive director and CEO in the organization's history. Along with my outstanding team and our board, we've weathered redevelopment, elimination, closure due to construction, recession, and slow recoveries. And since 2012, we've invested $1.2 million in rental subsidies for resident companies like the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, which is represented today, nonprofit and Glendale-based producers and businesses to attract business to Glendale. We've also invested close to $500,000 in community programming. Over the past 8 years, well over 500,000 people have walked through our doors, and 75,000 have attended our community arts events like Open Arts and Music Festival, Taste Walk Glendale, Pop-Up, and our now defunct Glendale Pops Orchestra. These local and regional visitors have generated $10 million in local revenue. Tamar walked you through our rental history, so I'll save you that boredom. But we've accomplished all of this, including winning Best Live Venue in LA several times, and getting the prestigious Los Angeles Historic Theater Foundation Award, as well as being honored by the Glendale Chamber of Commerce. We've accomplished all of this with reduced funding from the city, increased costs such as labor, and changes to tax laws that have hindered our fundraising efforts. We've accomplished all of this because of our commitment to our mission. And I'm not telling you just to tout our accomplishments, although my mom's pretty proud. I tell you this so that you understand our business operation. And we've worked closely with the community development and economic development departments to ensure that they understand our complicated and nuanced relationship. Because we aren't simply an arts organization, we're a small business, and we're an economic generator. And we employ over 17 full-time people in this city and over 15 part-time employees. Many of them work here, many of them eat here, many of them shop here. We use Porto's pastries in our concessions. We hire GYA, Verdugo Job Center, and Express Employment workers. We provide box office services for GCC, after-school programs at Hoover, and other programs with the YWCA and other partners. We are Glendale, and we know that arts have a ripple effect, and for us, the effect is cash. We entered into the 2015 agreement without any idea that in just 5 years the minimum wage would double, that tax laws would make it challenging for us to raise money, and immigration law would make it really challenging for some of our promoters to get visas, resulting in a significant amount of cancellations. And we project over the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to have a $3 million budget just to sustain the current operation. The primary cost is labor. Please let me continue.
How much longer do you have?
I can talk really fast. Can I have an additional 2 minutes?
Okay.
Thank you, you're very kind. Our primary cost, and this is something that you bring up, so I want to address it, is labor. But it's my labor that holds the organization together. They are the heart and soul of the bricks and mortar building, and it's simply prudent to invest in them. Our bathrooms are spotless, our audience service and stage departments are continually complemented by everyone from NBC to LACO to the Glendale Youth Orchestra, and Golden Voice. Our facilities and safety director knows where every crack in the building is and what day he's going to fix it. Our box office manager and our director of operations haven't taken a day off in God knows how long. And the managing directors of both Glendale Arts and the Alex Theater are solely responsible for generating $2.25 million in earned and contributed income each year. The team is expected to balance an enormous expectation from our rental users, our resident companies, our audience members, our ticket buyers, our concessions consumers, our local businesses, and of course you all. And the team is the best at what they do. And they work hard for very little. I've personally taken pay cuts over the last 2 years so that some of my most talented employees could get raises. And the people who work for me stay with this organization and the Alex, not because I give them this worthy wage of their talents or their skills or an amazing healthcare package or a modest 401k. They stay because they love the Alex. They stay because they share a common mission with each other, which is to give people the best possible experience that they can give. This month alone, my team hosted 5 sold-out shows with Patti Smith, Disney CEO Bob Iger, Yanni, children and Artie's favorite performer, Rafi, renowned writer Richard Dawkins, the LA Chamber Orchestra, the Pacific Ballet, a Best Buy commercial, and as we speak, they're doing a holiday special for CBS. Since October 24th, my team has worked 5 productions in 4 days, including 2 events in 1 day, and hosting over 2,500 audience members. In between productions, we are expected to be the stewards of the venue, keeping it maintained. And when you do over 200 dates a year and you're in a 94-year-old building, that's a lot of work to keep her working on a day-to-day basis. Glendale is on the precipice of an unprecedented investment in the arts, and we were leading the charge way before there was an arts and entertainment district, long before there was an Art Soc Paseo, and long before Mona and Teas were in town. Glendale Arts was the arts and culture in this community, and now we believe that we've earned the right to be written into whatever plan ensures the fiscal health and the prosperity of Glendale's most iconic venue. You've often asked me what my wish is. So here's my wish. Maybe it's more of a hope. I hope the council will take quick and decisive action and give clear direction as to how to proceed with our request to renew and extend our lease and management agreement for the next 10 years. I hope the conversation will include a serious discussion regarding the funds attached to that agreement and the capital responsibilities that both parties should share and why. I've stood before you for 8 years, and I've worked with many of you for the 7.5 prior to that, and I honestly can't see a world where you're going to learn anything new about our commitment to this organization and the success of the operation. Anything other than swift action will significantly impact our ability to move forward with launching major gifts program and will have a detrimental effect on the organization. It will also cause major concern amongst our residents.
We're going past the 3rd minute.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Last
we have the
paragraph, I
timer
promise.
on here.
Thank you for indulging me. I do appreciate it. I want you to understand that it's my team that has accomplished all of these great things, but the future of the Alex Theater and Glendale Arts really remains in your hands. And again, thank you so much for giving me the additional time to speak on behalf of my organization.
Thank you. Yes.
Couple of questions.
Questions?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thought you were done
About
listening
how many employees, permanent employees are there?
I have 17 full-time permanent employees. I have up to 50 part-time employees. Of those part-time employees, I would say 25 to 30 are on permanent rotation, whether it's front of house, concessions, box office, or stage. And then based on the type of production, a large-scale production, as Ms. Sad mentioned, could pick up an additional 20 just random stage crew people that work in the city or City of Los Angeles.
And you didn't mention the board. How active is your board?
We actually have a really great board now. We've spent several years, probably 5 or 6, really curating the type of people that we wanted on the board, we needed on the board, and we're starting to build some significant fundraising opportunities through some of our board members. But it all takes time, and it all takes time to gestate, and we needed time to also rebuild the foundation and the infrastructure of Glendale Arts so it could support the type of vision and direction that was laid out in the strategic plan that was presented with this report.
How long are the terms?
The terms of the board.
Of the board.
So each board member serves 1-year term, for 3 terms in total. The first year is a 1-year term. We call it the honeymoon period. If they like us and we like them, they get voted on for a 3-year term, and then their final term is a 2-year term. After that, they have to take a year off, and we have one board member who actually requested to return after her sabbatical.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Kubel?
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for allowing me to speak. It's really hard to follow Elisa. My name is Phil Kubel. I've been a resident of Glendale for over 20 years. I am the current vice chair of the board for Glendale Arts, and I'll be the incoming chair next year. I just want to stand up here before you and voice my support and ask you for your support of Glendale Arts and kind of follow the if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of mentality. Elisa and our team have done an amazing job, and it's an honor to serve on the board of such a diverse board, a passionate board, and the meaning of the Alex Theater, I don't have to reiterate what that means to Glendale and how important it is. But it's been a privilege and an honor to serve on this board, to be part of it, to serve as, and to provide it as a foundation for the city of Glendale. And I really ask you guys to consider continuing a long-term commitment to Glendale Arts as the stewards, as the ambassadors, as the flag carriers of the Alex Theater. They've proven they've done a great job. They continue to do a great job. Many of the board members are here today to support that cause. Some may speak, some may not. But I just ask you to really consider that and allow us to continue to do the great things that we've done for the city. Thank you.
Mr. Quintero?
If you don't mind, can you tell us your background, what you do?
Sure. So I've worked for 20 years in the entertainment industry, primarily in sports production. I'm currently the director of the Hollywood Professional Association, which, very similar to like Glendale Arts, is a nonprofit that supports the motion picture industry in Hollywood. It honors the unsung heroes, the visual effects artists, the sound mixers, the editors, and coincidentally, we are looking at the Alex Theater to move one of our major flagship events, which is our annual award show, to the Alex. So that is under consideration. So my background is in the arts.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mike Velasquez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, staff. Thank you for letting me speak. And good afternoon to friends and stakeholders of this beautiful city that we call home. Also home of the Alex Theater. Okay. My name is Mike Velasquez, and I have been a resident of Glendale for about 37 years. Over the past 37 years, I have had the pleasure of attending dozens of events at the Alex Theater. More recently, I have been privileged to serve in the role of advisory board member for the Alex Theater, for Glendale Arts, I should say. And in the interest of full disclosure, my firm is also currently the independent auditors for Glendale Arts, and I suspect that will not invalidate my independence speaking here today. Give me a second, my phone keeps going out. So first I want to commend all of those that had a part in preparing that very impressive presentation. I believe it was generally fair and factual and very well done. I would like to supplement that assessment with my own perspectives, however. So I have, because of my past exposure to the Alex Theater and to Glendale Arts, I think I am uniquely qualified and intimately knowledgeable of the affairs of the Glendale Arts and the Alex Theater. I have also been a customer of the Alex, having produced 2 or 3 different events with the Arturo Sandoval
Institute that some of you may have been present at. My own company has had events there, and my wife and I are also privileged to be contributors and supporters of Glendale Arts. Okay? Needless to say, I am intimately aware of the Alex, Glendale Arts, and the job Elisa Glickman and her team have done and continue to do, the challenges and obstacles they overcome, and the incredible creative energy they display every day. It is hard to imagine a better, more dedicated team. At this time of accountability, I challenge you to match that creativity in coming up with a sustainable business model that allows the Alex and Glendale Arts to grow and evolve beyond subsidies, balance sheets, and management fees. You see, the Alex's promise, consistent with the vision of Glendale Arts, cannot be achieved with old, tired ministerial solutions, but rather with big, bold, creative thinking involving public-private partnerships and audacious leadership that is not afraid of doing so. Consider that we are in Los Angeles County, arguably the entertainment capital of the world. I would argue that the Alex has no woes that cannot be cured with a creative business model, one that attracts the type of acts it deserves. It may require...
Mike, because...
2 seconds, almost done, almost done. It may require the acceptance of a little more risk and the willingness to try something new. I would encourage you to set aside some resources to get the best and the brightest community business people together with entertainment industry consultants for a day and recommend solutions to you. I would be happy to volunteer for that effort and know others that would also be happy to serve. In closing, I urge you to retain Glendale Arts and negotiate a new, more expansive role. Make a commitment to continue with an increased subsidy and watch the magic happen. To track ROI based only on your support without the substantial yet intangible indirect benefits in keeping dollars here in town is tantamount to negligence. I urge you to do the hard work of seeing beyond the now and look at the future. Simon Sinek, noted author and speaker, tells business people to start with the why. Why? To paraphrase Walt Disney, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. Thank you.
Folks, we have a 5 o'clock meeting at Glendale Community College, and the college staff is all waiting for us. So I cannot give one more second over to 3 minutes. So if I say goodbye, I'm sorry, but we're running late. And I'd like to hear from all of you, but our time just is very tight. Mike Hume.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council members and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mike Hume. I'm from the Board of Directors of the Los Angeles Historic Theatre Foundation, a non-profit with a mission to protect, preserve, restore and sustain the operation of historic theatres in Los Angeles County. Our foundation strongly supports Glendale Arts' continuing stewardship of the historic Alex Theatre, and I have a short statement from the board which I will read out. Since Glendale Arts took over the management of the Alex, they've gone through an important renovation and have continued to offer diverse programming for Glendale and the surrounding communities, while maintaining the Alex Theatre in excellent condition, making it one of the top rental venues of its size in Los Angeles County. In 2016, the Alex Theatre was the recipient of the Historic Theatre Foundation's Theatre of the Year Award, presented in recognition of their ongoing successful revitalisation of this historic 1925 theatre. The financials presented in the report demonstrate positive growth in a highly competitive market, and we believe that Glendale Arts' lease should be renewed for a minimum of 10 years. Nationwide, the standard lease terms for historic theatres are substantially longer than 10 years, ideally more than 40 years. Glendale Arts has proven to our satisfaction that they will continue to do what is best for the longevity of the Alex Theatre, and the longer term will allow them for greater opportunities when applying for grants and larger contributions. So the Historic Theatre Foundation would urge the City Council and to direct the city staff to begin negotiations with Glendale Arts for a longer term as requested. On a personal note, my background is in historic theatres and theatre photography. I spend my professional life travelling the country photographing theatres. Last week I was in San Diego at the Balboa Theatre. A couple of weeks before that in Tucson, Phoenix and Santa Barbara. And I go into the attic spaces, over the scenery flying systems, into cupboards and round corners, documenting these historic theatres. And I can safely say that the Alex is in amazingly good hands with Glendale Arts from my personal perspective. As far as I'm concerned, Alex starts with an A, and it's the A team that you already have here managing this historic resource. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Justice Zimmerman?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for having me. I'm Justice Zimmerman. I represent Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra here today. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications. And we are a longtime presenter at the Alex Theater and a longtime partner of Glendale Arts. And I have to say, as a presenter that comes in and rents there, the team has gotten better every single year that I've been here. And it has encouraged us as one of the major cultural institutions in LA County to do more and more bold things in Glendale, including our first ever community open rehearsal we did in September with the support of Elisa and the team here. We have also, every year we bring thousands of patrons from the surrounding areas and from Glendale to this community to shop and eat dinner before the concert. We bring international acts like Hilary Hahn and all kinds of people, and including some of the most compelling living composers who live and work in Glendale, of all places, like Andrew Norman and Derek Spiva Jr. So I just wanted to put our word in as Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra that working with Glendale Arts has been a really impactful relationship for us. And were you to extend their contract further into the future, it would make our job of locking down where we want to be easier, and we'd be able to commit longer term to this community, which we have loved being in. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Randy Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Najarian. Randy Carter, 1614 Ben Lomond, Glendale. I am current board member and founder of the Alex Film Society, now in its 25th year. I served for 2.5 terms on the Alex Regional Theater Board, and Phil throws something at me, but I may be the longest associate of the Alex Theater in this room today. So I'll try and just give you some input in a bullet round. You're looking for outside bids. My gut feeling is the Alex is a 1450 seat house. The Nederlanders, the Leibniz, because they're looking for a 2,500 seat house. When I worked on Seinfeld and they did an episode about the Alex, I asked Jerry, hey, would you play the Alex? He said, I only play 2,500 seats, the Fox Atlanta, the Fox Detroit, bigger houses like that. My gut feeling is when you get outside bids, they'll give you a list of, well, you'll take care of this, and you'll take care of this, and you'll take care of it. It'll probably exceed what Glendale Arts has handed you or anybody else. The thing that I learned in the 10 years on the Alex Regional Theater Board is we used to produce shows, and it was funny, the financials, the actuals, came down to we could pay the performance fee. We had the Nederlands dance, Martha Graham dance troops, Marilyn Horne, great acts. The publicity budget, which had to be in the LA market, $10,000 or $15,000, was exactly the deficit. So I used to say, not with great acclaim, that we could have put a 3x5 card up at the library and done the same thing that we were doing with those programming. But it only leads me to tell you the challenges of producing at the Alex. So when you talk about the big players come in there, run the place, they're going to look at the financials and it's not going to pencil out, so they're going to be looking for massive subsidies. That's my gut feeling. In my closing, I will say that the biggest thing that I would encourage you to re-up the Glendale Arts contract is I think they, over the years, have developed a better handle on the community aspect of this. There's a Glendale quotient in this whole question, and we are a diverse community, whether it's an Armenian dance company, the old Alex Film Society showing classic films, a variety of things that are not heavily financed. They're not, they're not a $80 ticket. And I think Glendale Arts has a good handle on shepherding those kind of events. Because when the building was renovated and acquired by redevelopment, it was to be an anchor of mid-brand, which we're still working on, but it was to have a community element. And I think that they have the expertise to administer that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any other cards. Let's open it up for discussion. Mr. Gajamian.
I'm glad I have my Kiwanis friends here, like Elisa Glickman and Mike Velasquez. They are here, and others. And I agree with all those statements uttered by speakers here. I have attended many performances during 40 years that I'm living here in Glendale, and this is a pretty venue. Now it's real nice after renovation. I participated and been there for many performances as a chairman of nonprofit organization and member of other organizations. We have hired or rented the place because we think that's the best venue in Glendale. So I'm very familiar with Alex Theater. But the point is that I'm city council member. Accountability and being careful with how much money we are spending, I mean, the city council should spend or will spend, is important to me. Alex Theater, I'm hoping to become self-sufficient. Cannot rely on city continuously inject money in there. That's not the purpose I'm here. I mean, to say different words, great, because you want to be elected, that's not me. So, as I said, Alex Theater, during the years, it has to become self-sufficient. I mean, we cannot put money in it continuously. We already spent, a few years ago, this city spent lots of money, renovated this place, which I like, and I agreed with it. But as far as operation is concerned, we have to come to a balance, spending money. I mean, this, in my opinion, is not right. Continuously, we will be part of it, spend money specifically that during next few years, in my opinion, there will be some sort of slowdown in businesses. There will be, maybe recession is in horizon. So I will wait until my colleagues will speak about this issue, but I would like to offer that we will to consider the alternative 4, that let the group to run Glendale Art Board to run the place for another 2 years. During the next 2 years, maybe we have to get together and help each other to find a better way to get to self-sufficiency. So my request, or what I ask, would be, as I said, alternative 4 with 2 years extension. After, of course, I will listen to my colleagues now.
Okay. Other comments?
I'll go next. Okay, so I've also been around, not as long as Randy, but I've also been around the Alex for many, many years. And I mentioned it earlier to Mr. Agajanian. I do remember specifically when I was on some committee, and when we were discussing the operation, the idea that that number of seats wouldn't necessarily work out that well financially, that was mentioned. And the idea at one point, it didn't go, was to keep the facade, to keep the entrance, to keep everything whole, but to do a larger seating and then go with a much smaller that would give us more revenue. But that didn't prevail. Instead, we just redid the Alex. But anyway, throughout the years, it's been a jewel for Glendale. There's no question about it. The subsidy over time has gone down, so I'm very happy that that's the case. And look, for me, as we all know, these things never pencil out in terms of dollars and cents for the organization that is doing the subsidy, whether it's the City of LA or Santa Monica or whoever it is. All of the areas that I'm familiar with when it comes to the art, it doesn't pencil out when you're setting up a budget. But it certainly does in terms of the cultural life, and it certainly does for all those small mom and pop restaurants on Brand Boulevard. There's no question it pencils out then. All you have to do is go there when there are events at the Alex and you see all the restaurants. So I think even when you look at it objectively in terms of money, I think it works out well for our downtown. I also don't think that private companies are necessarily the solution, whether it's Live Nation or whoever it is, even if in fact we could turn in, or they would perhaps, reduce the subsidies, you'd have to cut something. You'd have to cut the nonprofits that I know the Alex tries to give breaks to, and you'd absolutely have to cut some of the work that's done with the schools and all of the other activities that were mentioned here this afternoon. Private for-profit companies are there to run a venue and to to move on. So anyway, I think all in all, I am comfortable with the current management. I think throughout the years we've done a good job. I would like to see an active board of directors. I think that's essential, and I do like this timing. I've actually not familiar with that, the idea of serving 1 year and then another shorter term and then finally a final term. I think that's a great idea. The more diverse it is, I think the better off we are. Then I do like the idea, perhaps, of putting a committee together to see what we can do to reduce the subsidy. Have the committee, not only a board of directors, but maybe other people in the community and outsiders, see if somehow we can reduce the subsidy and be a little more effective in running the Alex. And then finally, the naming rights. I don't know where that's going to head, but it's certainly worth examining and trying to get some money from some sponsors. I hate to see that Spire, have some commercial application put on it, but it doesn't have to be that. There's so many ways to do it, including social media. So I'm sure all the creative members on the board of directors can come up with some solution.
Okay. Ms. Devine?
Sure. Well, let's see, where do I begin? I think the Alex Theater, I think two statements were made this afternoon that are really important. Number one is that the Alex Theater is meeting the needs of Glendale. They are meeting the needs of our community. Activities, shows, there is a huge involvement of the community with, and outside of our community, with the activities and the programs that go on at the Alex. The second statement I thought was very important was that it is, in fact, an economic generator. When people come to the Alex Theater for programs, they shop, they dine, they enjoy the Glendale experience, and that's really important to our economic sustainability as a city. I think when I was thinking about this, it's like I guess we have to weigh how important is the Alex as far as historic importance and bringing entertainment and people to our community to keep this the stream of revenue going. And for me, I think the Alex Theater is important because of the programs that it provides for our kids, for our adults, the shows that we have that they're able to enjoy, the dance. And it's not all about how much money we make. Some things are way more important, way more important than that. However, in saying that, when I looked at the for-profit, the Live Nation, they were costing, the city was paying them $500,000 a year, and they were never recouping that money. They even lost one year over $300,000. So would this pay? Would this be worth it? When you consider the transition and the headaches, and just the fact that we would lose, and I'm sure I agree with Councilmember Quintero, we would lose that Glendale feel, that community feel. And on the another important factor to me is I see how hard the staff at the Alex work to make this theater successful. And there is no one, I don't think, on this green earth that could do a better job at bringing our community to enjoy this beautiful theater, to bring other residents from other communities here. The board has been very active, and I encourage them to continue to be proactive, because it is your responsibility as a board to maintain the sustainability of this theater. I feel, in looking at all of these theaters that were mentioned, every city that has a theater a bit like the Alex, I can't say that there's any city that has one exactly as extraordinary as the Alex. They all contribute and participate in subsidies for the theaters. And so I'm going to cut this short because I know we have time. So I would be in favor of an extension, keeping our staff in place and our Glendale Alex Theater running as beautifully as it's been run in the last few years.
So if I can ask, a 5-year extension?
A 5-year, well, I had I wanted to ask a question about the grants, and I think there was something in the report that said that we lose grants because we, either the lease isn't long enough or because you're connected with the city. Have we indeed lost grants because of that?
That was when, Councilmember Devine, that was when it was a quasi-city commission. Because when the Alex Regional Theater Board was in place, the Art Board was in place, it was a quasi-city commission because council appointed members to the board. And so they had difficulty securing grants at that time.
So that was in the past.
The grantor would just say, well, you rely on the city, you're a city operation.
Okay.
So the Amundsen Foundation would look and say, no, you're a city commission, have the city take care of it. And so by becoming independent nonprofit and disestablishing themselves from the city, then the grantors of the funds would say, oh, you're a nonprofit like everybody else. Okay. In fact, they just did for the digital camera.
So I'd like to ask Alyssa, if you're recommending or you're asking for 10 years, what would be the difference for you in 5 and 10?
Sure. The reason we're asking for a 10-year commitment is, we have resident companies like the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra are really looking ahead in their strategic planning. We do multi-year agreements with our resident companies. They would like to plan further out because they see that as a benefit to them in their own funding sources as well as their own artists and musicians. So I think it gives our rental users, which is the heart and soul of our operation, more confidence that they're going to work with the operation that they signed up to work with, A. B, it's really about those long-term sponsorship and naming opportunities. We want to be able to reap the full benefit of the hard work in securing those. And if we start now and we do have long-term 10-year agreements and those investments are made over that period of time, you're not going to want to get rid of us anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's a moot point. But if you do, then those funds will be invested properly based on the contractual obligations I mentioned earlier.
But then that leads me to the question, will you be there in 10 years? Will your staff be there in 10 years? You know what I mean?
I mean, I can't predict the future, and I can't guarantee that any of us sitting in this room today will be here in 10 years. Right. But what I can guarantee, and what you saw in our strategic plan, is that we now have a pathway forward in terms of how we've developed our staff, what succession policies we've made, how our training has been in the foundation for all training. So if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody could literally step into my job. They might not be as delightful, but they could literally step into my job and do the work that I'm doing because we have created the infrastructure to make that happen.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, hearing that, I'm kind of a bit nervous about 10-year plans. I think 5 years out, but if my fellow council members want to do 10, I'd be in favor of that.
I was going to go to Mr. Garpetian and then swing back, and then I'll speak. Mr. Garpetian.
You sure you want to go to? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, where did I want to start? I think there is a little bit of a misconception out there that maybe this council is not for Alex Theater. Maybe we don't care about the community aspect of it. Maybe we care only about the money or the subsidy that we give to Alex. Maybe we are challenged to sit and do the programming. I think that's all wrong. I just want to mention that because we do care about Alex. We care about the community aspect of it, and this is a community asset basically. This is one property that I think everybody in this community feels that has a part of it. It owns a little bit of it, and I think you've done a good enough job. I don't know if you bring Life Nation tomorrow and they make, I don't know, $100,000 a year extra. What's it going to do to the city? Absolutely nothing. We just spent $500,000 bringing in an ice rink for this year because this community wanted it. And this community, not demanding it, but they were interested in it. And I think the community wants Alex to stay the way it is, and that's what I want too. As far as the naming opportunities, I think we need to have a little study session between this group and us, maybe a 2-hour, 3-hour study session, like we do for our budget, and exchange ideas, come up with ideas and exchange ideas and see what is it that we think we can do to help more, what is it that some other people can bring their ideas to the table to, because I don't want to change the name of the theater to Vartan's Theater. I don't want to do that. I don't want to change the backbone of this theater. I want this to be self-sufficient, but if we have to subsidize it, we'll subsidize it. But I want to understand where we're going. Right now, based on the numbers that we have, so 18-19 is 2.3 million, 19-20. These are projections, or can I bring Alyssa up, Mr. Mayor, for a few short questions?
I just want you guys to know the college folks are going to be.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. This is here. I think we need to.
They're budget numbers, Mr. Garpetian.
These are budget.
Those are budget numbers.
So these are budget that they're looking for, basically.
No, if I may clarify, we produce a budget each year based on previous history, growth, et cetera. Those are the numbers that you're looking at for our FY20 year. The other numbers are numbers that are real and actual numbers based on how much we generated in income and how much we spent.
So this 2.3 is what? Like
we
89?
currently operate a $2.4 million budget with income and expenses. That's the totality of the budget.
Okay, so we want to go to $3 million, basically.
No, I think what my point was is that we project in order to sustain current levels of operation based on expenditures, we're looking at a $3 million budget in the next 3 to 4 years. And the other point that I want to make as we discuss extensions and terms is that the current extension does not have any fiduciary responsibilities other than the capital projects that are laid out. And so whatever this council decides, our board will then have to go back and see if it makes financial sense for us to continue to operate the Alex in the fashion that we're currently operating it without some sort of management fee and without the ability to do something on a more long-term basis. So I also wanted an opportunity to make that point because the council can make a recommendation, but the Glendale Arts Board can choose to accept or reject that recommendation and counter with something else.
Sure. Okay.
So I hope that
Fair
answers your first question.
No, fair enough.
Thank you.
So I think the economic spin-off is tremendous for the Alex Theater. Every time we have events, we know that it's out there. No one can dispute that. And for me, in general, I want to see where are we going so we can put this thing together the way that it needs to be, so we don't have to go back and forth every year after year after year, so we know it's an automatic pilot type thing. So therefore, I think we need to have a little study session to bring these ideas up and see how can, as council members can help or bring other ideas, or your team can bring other ideas, so we can reach the goal of $2.5 million or $3 million sooner than later.
And I respect that tremendously. I just fear that a study session is going to prolong a process where if council could make immediate recommendations to staff, that process could be done as a staff and then brought to this council so that you could share your wisdom after staff has done the hard work, and you could give your input and feedback. I think that has worked successfully with other negotiations that I've seen. It's worked successfully to a certain degree with how we've managed the process in the past, and I think that it's critical for us, based on our strategic plan and the direction that we want to go, that we know what our future is. And a study session is going to prolong the inevitable.
No, I'm not saying not to give an extension and do a study session and do an extension. I'm okay with doing an extension today, but meanwhile, after the extension is done, I think we need to do a study session for us to understand, because some of these numbers are new to me. So sure. I want to understand what the plan is, the naming. Was this the naming of the seats, or what do you call it? The naming opportunities. Did it start 4 years ago, or is just starting?
So,
is it?
Sure.
Sure.
These are theoretical questions that we can address in the study session, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
And do we want to do the entry? Do we want to do the rooms downstairs? What, as far as the namings go?
We are scheduled to complete the preliminary major gifts plan in the next month or so, and I will present it to staff, and then they can determine how they want to share that with council.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm taking up all of the time.
Right. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to vote as well.
Let's go. We've got more discussion. You haven't heard from me yet.
Very brief,
Mr. Gajanian.
I just heard they say, it brings, Alex Theater brings business to downtown, economic generator. I mean, what I was saying, that I'm not offering to close the doors, then there will be no business will come to downtown. It will not generate any money. What I'm saying, regardless what happens, if the Alex Theater is operating, so business will come to downtown. There will be no changes. The other matter which bothers me as a member right now, being a chairman of nonprofit organization, and past president of many organizations and member of many organizations, they all, the time they come and say, other nonprofit organizations are losing money, so it's okay. This nonprofit organization also to lose some money, it's fine, because it brings business to downtown. It's economic generator of downtown. I mean, this nonprofit, we are not saying to close Alex Theater. We want Alex Theater to thrive. I want to see Alex to be more successful. I go to different shows and I enjoy when I go to Alex Theater. That's my, but still what I offered before, that we consider this for 2 years, and that's my.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be real quick. Point number one, no one is talking about closing the Alex. That is not an issue. Point number two, no one is talking about throwing out Glendale Arts. That is not an issue. The worst case scenario for Glendale Arts is to compete in an open competition in an RFP. That's the worst case scenario that we're facing here today. There's no doubt in my mind that Glendale Arts would be extremely competitive and perhaps a runaway winner in that. As a council member, many times, if not always, our burden is to make sure that when we sign a contract, and this is a contract, that we are making sure that it's not a sole source contract and that we're looking at all other possibilities. As far as I can see in the history, I don't think there was an RFP ever. That Glendale Arts sort of inherited this from the previous iterations that we had. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, from the city organization,
Right.
Quasi-city.
It sort of morphed into what we have today.
That's correct.
No, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. In that course, you became aware of what the city's needs are. That is a good thing. My recommendation is that we go, I'm going to be a little more generous than Mr. Agajanian. I'm going to say go for 3 years, but in that time, I want to see some corporate development. I want to see some foundations getting involved. I want to see some seats getting named. I want to see some forecourts getting named. That's what I want to see. I don't think we can ask you to tighten your schedule anymore. Serving 90-something events a year is tough. I know how you have to set up, tear down. I'm not sure how much more we can ask you of that, but I think we can certainly ask for greater foundational work, corporate involvement, and that sort of thing. And in a 3-year time period, I think we should at least be able to see something in a year or 2 years. At that point, I'm not going to be hesitant to go for a longer contract, maybe the 10-year contract that we floated out here. But I want to see some action on that. It's many facets to this management of the theater, not just the production work, not just fixing the holes in the wall, but it's getting involvement. It's getting a Disney-type sponsor. It's getting a Age of Learning sponsor, a Service Titan sponsor, or someone big like that, or a lot of other smaller folks getting involved to help defray the capital expenses on this theater. So my motion would be a little different than Mr. Agajanian's, to consider a 3-year extension of the contract. That's from June. Now, don't forget, we're talking about June of 2020. It's going to go to June of 2023, if I count correctly. That's almost 4 years from now. I think that's a good long time to prove to us that you've worked on your corporate sponsorship end of it, your naming rights, and at that point, as Elisa said, who knows who's going to be around in that time. But if I'm around, I think, to me, that's going to be something that would merit a long-term extension.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Ms. Pierce.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I do want to note, whatever direction council gives us today related to extension of the contract, We will then take that direction from the city council and have the opportunity to then go negotiate with the Glendale Arts executive director and board and provide that information back to the city council. And that gives us that opportunity and that timeline before the end of the contract period, which is June of 2020.
Well, hopefully it won't take 8 months
It
to
shouldn't.
get there. But I understand that this is just whatever decision we take, it's basically a proposal
Correct.
to the Glendale Arts Board for them to discuss and either agree and we'll get the paperwork. Ms. Devine?
Yeah, I just want to say that, 3 years is not a very long time to try to establish what you're talking about, and I think that we should just give them the 5-year extension, have them work very hard in 5 years with the knowledge that after 5 years, if this has not come to fruition, the plans and the financial sustainability, that then we would be looking outside for other agencies to run the Alex.
Okay, so that's a 5-year. Mr.
Okay, I'm supporting 5 years. I just don't think it can be done in any time. And I do agree, getting together with the council is a good idea, and specifically forming a committee to see how we can lower that subsidy and what else can be done. But I think 5 years for me is a minimum.
Okay, so
Should I
let's,
offer?
so we've got two ideas
I'm
out
okay
here.
with 5 years too. I think between 3 to 5 years, we're talking about 2 years difference, and we want to give them enough time to basically lay down the foundation and do what they're planning on doing, because this is not easy as well. So I'm okay with 5 years as well.
So make a motion for a 5-year extension.
I'll second it.
Okay, so let me get this clear. If we say 5-year, it goes back to them, they say, do they want the 5-year or not? And then it comes back to us for a final approval?
Correct. The lease terms, ultimately. What does each of the 5 years entail in terms of management fees, in terms of capital, in terms of all of the pieces, naming rights, et cetera? All of those pieces would be
That will
vetted
come back to us.
through the negotiation process and would come back to the city council.
Okay. Well, let me add, since we seem to be going to the 5 years, that's okay, but I want to see back, I will not support 5 years on a final vote unless I see a business model, a business plan on how we're going to get that additional corporate involvement, whether it's, and not just corporate, individual buy-in, corporate, institutional, and foundational involvement. So that might be several weeks, maybe a month or two until we get all the paperwork down.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying I want to see the money, but I want to see a plan before us.
Is that something that has to be in the motion?
No, I'm just telling you,
okay.
for me,
All right.
if I don't see that, I'm not going to support any amount of time. But if I do see it, I will support the 5-year. And for now, I will support the 5-year as our position to go to Glendale Arts Board and have them come back and have the details be presented to us at a later meeting for ratification. So is there a motion for the 5 years?
I'll move the 5-year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Thank you. Next item.
Mr. Mayor and Council, next item is City Clerk regarding calling and giving notice of the general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. 3 is a resolution calling and giving notice of the holding of a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 in the city of Glendale for the election of certain officers as required by the provisions of the laws of the state of California relating to Charter City. B is a resolution requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Los Angeles to direct the registrar, recorder, county clerk to render full consolidation election services with the exception of candidate filing to said city relating to the conduct of a general municipal election to be held on March 3rd, 2020. C is a resolution setting forth regulations relating to candidate statements for March 3rd, 2020 general municipal election. I have a short presentation of about 30 slides that I'll try to get through as quick. I'm kidding.
Do you have any slides?
There are no slides.
Do we need to discuss this? Is this different than what we've done?
This is just an essential and necessary procedural motion by council. Without it, we would not have an election and would be in violation of state law.
Okay.
I'll move the item.
And as you're discussing that, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the potential vote centers for 2020 election, I think Angie has distributed.
We will be distributing. We have not yet, but.
Not yet. will be distributing those to you so that it's part of the record in terms of the feedback that you had given us some months ago when our city clerk, Artie Kasakian, was before you to give you an initial report. Angie is distributing that as we speak. I wanted to make sure that that's also part of the record.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Also, to confirm, the Police Community Center has been confirmed as of today as a possible location. Ultimate decision will be to the county as to whether they will select either the Central Library or the Police Community Room. There were initial concerns about the Police Community Room's use because the county has not wanted to have any of the vote centers close to any police departments, but we have confirmed that they are going to potentially use that. It'll just be up to them. It could be a last-minute decision as to whether they go with the library or the police department, and that's only because it would be both are large vote centers of considerable size in close proximity. And lastly, I do want to state that starting January 5th through January 25th, 2020, there will be a demonstration center at the Police Community Center for residents and everyone who wishes to go see these new machines and see how they would work. So that we're very fortunate to be able to have the county use our facilities and would be open to anyone in the city and surrounding areas to come and see these new devices and how they will operate.
So I see that one of the places is a banquet hall.
Couple of them.
So on premises, in the lobby, there'll be the banquet, I mean, that's weird.
So there are a couple of types of locations. Some will be open for 11 days prior to the election. Others will be open for only 4 days prior to and leading up to the election date. And in terms of these locations, these are places that the county is vetting. Certainly not, we've suggested some from our part, but all the ones that were suggested from our office are ones that we have used previously and that we've focused mainly on using city facilities that we know we have control over in terms of access and duration of access. With regard to that, you know, I do thank the city manager's office in helping us secure the police community room for the duration that we would need it in order for it to be a vote center.
Okay, there was a motion for all three resolutions. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.
From me.